Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast After the Bell with Chip Nellinger. Today is Friday, so we're going to do a wrap up of the week, but also talk about today's markets. So, Chip, how you doing? And looks like we had a pretty good day in the markets.
Good. Yeah, it was kind of a surprisingly strong day. Given the fact that so I'm in South Bend, Indiana right now, about a 4-hour drive from home, and planters were rolling all over. And if they weren't planting, field work starting. So the weather window next week, it's warming up. It's still fairly dry. Given that, you would have expected corn to really struggle this week, but everything's closing up near the highs of the day. You got a couple things going on here, big picture. Obviously, we've talked this week about the weather in Brazil. It's still dry. Their 10-week forecast is still pretty dry. I think that's giving corn some support. You had some acreage numbers out of Canada this morning, and it was surprisingly low on canola and soybeans, way below estimates there. So that spilled over and gave the bean market some support today. You know, there's some optimism that we're going into talks with China on this trade issue, the tariff issue. So there's some optimism that that's going to get hammered out and maybe give us a little bit of a lift. You had the funds in there buying. We're coming up. You've got Monday's the last trading day. So at the end, the last couple trading sessions of any month and the first 2 or 3 of a new month, the funds a lot of times are active, and it looked like they wanted to be in there on the buy side to end the week. So pretty good close in the grains. Corn, and I don't hold me exactly to these numbers. These are ballpark. So corn up about 13 cents for the week in the December. You had November beans up about 19 cents. Wheat up about 21 in the Chicago July, up just shy of 30 cents in Kansas City July. So pretty good week across the board. And normally, like I said, we'd be struggling right now, especially given the forecast and the planting pace we're seeing in corn and beans.
Yeah. And that was the next thing I was going to ask you about the forecast. So you look at it next week, and there's some pretty strong, severe weather that's supposed to go through most of the corn belt and basically and through the wheat belt as well. So you hear any rumblings about that could swing things one way or the other?
Well, obviously it's a double-edged sword this time of year, right? You need an open window to get seed in the ground. In the same breath, you'll take rain as well. So, I haven't heard a lot about that. They've actually backed off a little bit on we had a chance of rain here, kind of in the Eastern Corn Belt on Wednesday. They seemed like they backed off a little bit on that or pushed it back a little bit. I think the rain's maybe going to be more towards kind of like eastern Kansas, maybe Missouri. Now that is an area where they've been a little bit waterlogged. It's kind of that southern tier of the Corn Belt, like southern Indiana, southern Illinois, Kentucky. They've been a little wet down there. They don't need any more rain right now. So obviously it's a double-edged sword. If you're trying to get crop in the ground right now, you probably the last thing you want, especially since we're about to turn to May, is a bunch of rain. So I don't know that was a huge influence today, but the weather's going to be closely watched the first half of May regardless to see how planting progress is going. We'll get those updates every Monday now. So every Monday afternoon, 3 p.m. Central, is the planting progress of both corn and beans. So, the market will watch that pretty closely the next 2 or 3 weeks, as well as the weather, in Brazil. So it's exciting. Usually we're kind of dead at this period of time in the grain market, and we're seeing some movement. So that tells me we're probably opening the door for maybe a wild ride this summer. Doesn't mean we'll go straight up, but we could have some pretty wild gyrations here this summer.
Right on. Okay. So looking forward to next week, what do you see happening there, and what are some key indicators you see moving into the first part of the week?
Yeah, well, we mentioned the weather is going to be big. The crop planting progress Monday afternoon. You also have the Kansas wheat tour starting.
Right.
So that's a couple-day event, and the market will hang on the what comes out of that tour. So that could be a market mover for the wheat. The wheat market, wheat's hard to peg yields anyway.
Right.
But they hang on the reports from that tour. So they'll watch that very closely. Always weather, both here in South America, trade issues. So we've got a lot of things that are starting to affect this market. And that's why I said, we could be subject to some volatility here going forward.
Yeah. Customers that you have down in Kansas, Oklahoma, West Texas, those areas, I've been reading a lot about winter freeze damage and stuff to the wheat. Are you heard anything of substance there that could be an issue?
Yeah, there is definitely some of that. They've had about 4 different freezes, so it definitely affected them. But again, it's like trying to peg yield. I don't know that. You got to give that thing some time after the freeze to see, is it cosmetic? Is it really going to take yield? So I think that's still up for debate on what that freeze did. They've just had everything. It's been a brutal growing season for them. Multiple freezes and obviously drought, windstorms, and you name it, they've had it. So it's been a rough growing season.
Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't down there, it seems like. All right, Chip. Well, I think that pretty well covers it. Any last thoughts before we shut it down?
No, we didn't talk much about cattle. Had a good week there. Finally closed over 106 in the June.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard at this time much cash trade, but it sounds like it's going to be in the 124, 125 area. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. So, I think that it bodes well maybe for the next couple weeks in cattle. We have a really strong close. That ought to build some momentum and give us another $3 or $4 higher. It's going to give us an opportunity. Box beef is, I don't know, it's up $10 probably or more in the last 2 weeks. So for the short run, cattle look good for higher, but any cattle guys out there, boy, it's an opportunity. We got numbers coming, so I don't think we can get too bold up thinking we're, going to stay at these levels forever.
Yeah, okay. If guys want to get a hold of you and continue this conversation, how would they do that?
Just call our office, 309-550-7213.
Right
Love
on.
to talk to you.
Okay. You can find Moving Iron Podcast at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, and SoundCloud. And every Monday at 3:30 Central, Aaron Fennell, Regina Nardis, and myself have a Q&A session and kind of talk about what we see happen in the market. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them in on Twitter at Moving Iron LLC. And also you can catch Kirk Hins from BAM Weather, giving his national forecast as well as what's happening in South America. So till Monday, Chip, we'll talk to you then.
All right, have a good weekend.
Thanks, buddy.